Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the Week 7 rankings. We're going to start off with the wide receivers this week, and I believe every week that's just kind of the order we going. And if you are new here, I will give you a couple of quick explanations as to what you're seeing on the screen. Of course, you can find these rankings that we will be going over and the projections up on the website, www.theFFforge.com. There's a link down in the description. And the rankings will be available up on the website as of Wednesday evening at some point, hopefully earlier, but you should be pretty safe once we get into the later evening on Wednesday. And if this is a little too cluttered for you, if you don't want to see these projections, which is what this is an expected range, so a lower end projection and a higher end projection based on what these players have done this season and based on the matchup to some extent. Then you can just click on the bottom of this on the website. You get a little tab here too that you can click, and then you will see that the rankings are automatically updated on that page as well. Other than that, the only other that's really annoying that keeps popping up. The other thing on the screen here to the left of the name, you see a little square with some color, not a whole lot of description there. That is the temperature gauge of the player. In all these cases, red is good, blue is bad, and white is neutral. And it goes from a dark red to a white to a dark blue, so in that order. And this temperature gauge is just an amalgamation, a conglomeration, I think that's the word I wanted, of several outside factors to determine whether this is a good or bad, neutral type of matchup for these players. How likely is it that they end up having a ceiling type of game? The darker the red, the more likely that it's happened. Are they likely to have a bust week? Well, if it's a deep blue color, then you should be concerned about that. With that out of the way, just a reminder, I do go live several times throughout the week. Thursdays and Saturdays, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am live. Thursdays, of course, very concentrated on start-sit questions, but Saturdays we can get a little bit more out there with the questions. I was available for about 4.5 hours this past Saturday. So, that's been quite a success on Saturdays. That's awesome. Welcome if you're new from this past Saturday, which was the most successful session so far. And then Sunday mornings, I'm also available 2 hours prior to kickoff. With that being said, if you are unfamiliar with my fades and my loves, just going to recap from 2 weeks ago since we missed week 6 due to the hurricane and everything, how I did. Not really going to go into it too much. For my loves, I went 2 of 3, Garrett Wilson, George Pickens, Wan'Dale Robinson. For my fades, I went 2 of 3, had Darnell Mooney, Jordan Addison, Jacoby Myers. So that's great. If it's not too obvious, loves and fades, it's just like a start and sit suggestion. My loves are guys who I want to get out there to some extent in my roster, and fades are the guys who, if I can find a way to sit those guys, then that's what I would like to do. And I try not to make it easy on myself with those. I'm not picking A.J. Brown as a love because he's got a nice matchup this week. You're starting A.J. Brown every single week. So let's start off with my first tier. We're going to go through these first 43, I think it is, wide receivers, tier by tier. Then I do have another 44-ish wide receivers this week that are also projected and ranked. So you can, once again, find these up on the website. Links are down in the description. This is the first tier this week. Starting off with my wide receiver 1 is A.J. Brown, followed by Malik Nabers, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Chris Godwin, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drake London, Terry McLaurin. Sometimes I could get more specific with this tier drop off, maybe just make it these 3 or something, but it really doesn't matter that much for that. Like, these are all guys that you should be starting for sure, but especially that top tier. So I just kind of combined them down into just this one big tier this week where I'm getting these guys out there for one reason or another. And in the instances of Drake London, Terry McLaurin, after a iffy early season, these two have really, really turned it on and have been really good for you in fantasy, and it looks like this is something that should be able to continue as these offenses have kind of found themselves and found how to utilize these guys, say, along with their quarterbacks. So that is awesome. I don't think there should be too many other questions. Of course, Cooper Kupp is not a guarantee to be playing this week, and any kind of news that would come out about him being limited or something would affect his ranking, but I'm just going that he's coming out, and the reason that they're playing him is because he is healthy. So that's going to bring us on to this next tier of wide receivers. And that tier is going to start off right here with Stefon Diggs as my wide receiver 10 this week. Goes all the way down to my wide receiver 20, where we will get my first love of the week, the other wide receiver there in Houston. So after Stefon Diggs at wide receiver 11, we have Mike Evans. Baltimore, I don't believe, has like the guy to just absolutely shut down Mike Evans, so I think you should feel much better about playing him after a bust week last week. I did, try to warn you a little bit that it was a Chris Godwin week last week. And in terms of Chris Godwin, it's just been so good all season that I can no longer push him behind Mike Evans, even if I think it's a Mike Evans week, because he's just been that great, almost, regardless, no matter what. Consistent. Jaden Reed is my wide receiver 12. He is someone who we're waiting for the bust to happen, but he keeps booming. Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, Deebo Samuel, Zay Flowers, and Tank Dell will wrap up this tier. So we're still in like kind of must-start territory, but I don't think that, these are all, I'm sure I'll get a couple of questions with some of these guys in them. So Devontae Adams, if he's there, he's playing. Too good of a connection with Aaron Rodgers. I don't care about, I'm sure there might be a little bit of rust that needs to be knocked off. It's a different system and all this and that, but I tell you what, those two played together long enough. They have those back shoulder throws, just all the classic things. Like, it's going to be there quick enough. It is a tougher matchup against Pittsburgh. That's why I'm not even higher. And I am a little bit concerned about it, but I can't get myself at a certain point here in the rankings to start other people over them. Maybe it's excitement. Maybe that'll dwindle throughout the week or something. But, yeah, that's pretty cool. That was my expectation a couple of weeks ago. My most likely destination for Devontae Adams, if he gets traded, was the Jets. So, good for them. It just makes sense. They're all in. Unlike the Dallas Cowboys, what that means is they're actually putting all their chips in, not that they've already gone all in and now they're just going to sit back and see what happens with it. They're putting, they're going for it in New York, and what other choice do they have? That's going to bring us on to T. Higgins is obviously someone who might have some question marks going up against Cleveland. Their defense is not as good as it has been since last year. And it's a divisional game and everything. T. Higgins has been really good so far. So he did earn this spot. Deebo Samuel, could easily be ahead of him. He's been very good so far while he's been healthy. Zay Flowers, I can't imagine sitting him this week coming off of last week, which was a week that we liked him as well, going up against Tampa Bay. I expect really, really good things for Zay Flowers. And if he doesn't hit that ceiling, I still think against Tampa Bay, he's going to be able to find, the targets and the receptions on top of that to just give you a solid day, worst case scenario. Then we got Tank Dell going up against Green Bay. And this is a love for me. Tank Dell, we'll go a little bit over his targets when Nico Collins has not been in over the last couple of seasons in 2 games. So not a huge sample size, but in terms of the defense here, the Green Bay's defense, there's really nothing to be too afraid of. They're pretty much average in terms of the amount of fantasy points that they allowed to the wide receiver position. They don't really have a true lockdown cornerback at this point. We want to say that Jair is that, but he really isn't currently. We know he has the talent to be that, but it just hasn't been like that for years. A couple of injuries and whatnot, a new system that he's learning right now. And part of that system, speaking of, is that this is an aggressive defense, which can cost you, especially against guys like Tank Dell, who can go deep very fast on you. And if you get caught with your, feet going forward, Tank might just burn you. So watch out for that. I don't want to say expect that this week, but even if that doesn't come through, even if you don't get the one big play from Tank Dell, he gets targeted a lot when Nico Collins is not playing. He just got 9 targets this last week, and that was in a game that they won 41-21, so it's not even like they were just passing all game and playing from behind, nothing like that. And, of course, we expect that Green Bay could very well be the highest-scoring game of the week. This is on the table as being a higher-scoring game is the expectation coming into it, Green Bay versus Houston. And also, when you go back last year when Nico Collins missed a game, now I'm going off of memory from this offseason and doing some stuff, but I think I'm like pretty confident in this. And if it wasn't 14 targets, it was like 12. Tank Dell had 14 targets last year in a game without Nico Collins. So We've seen him get heavily targeted. That was his most targeted game last year when Nico Collins is out, and I expect that to continue. So I'm going all in on Tank Dell. It's going to be hard for me to sit him. I got to have some really good wide receivers and options at the flex as well. Let's bring us on to this next tier of wide receivers. Starts off at my wide receiver 21. Looks like it's going to go down to my wide receiver 26. No fades or loves here, so let's just go through this tier. Looks like a tier of concern, question marks, and maybe some optimism even in there. Brandon Ayuk is this mixture of concern and optimism, and Kansas City defense has tended to play man against San Francisco in the past. And if that is the case, that should help Brandon Ayuk more so than Deebo Samuel. So fingers crossed a little bit with Ayuk here. Also understandable if you just don't want to play him. Garrett Wilson, definite concern with the matchup. Definitely some concerns with bringing in Devontae Adams here. But I still think that there will be a solid target share coming to Garrett Wilson. And ultimately, this hopefully just makes this offense more better, able to sustain drives, and that should potentially, between just longer drives, more targets, more passing attempts throughout the game, usually guys being able to get a little bit more open, maybe a higher completion percentage, and more scoring touchdowns at the end of the day. I think that stuff might offset for Garrett Wilson at the end of the day, a little bit of a lower floor here, but the ceiling I think stays intact. So we'll see how that works out. But I think overall Devontae Adams, there's a chance that helps Garrett Wilson a little bit here. Not necessarily compared to the last 2 weeks, but compared to the season overall so far. Jameson Williams is my wide receiver 23. Minnesota's a good matchup for wide receivers, so we'll give it another shot. Brian Thomas Jr. in a tougher matchup there. Juju Smith-Schuster in not a great matchup necessarily, but also one that can be had, and I'm expecting that floor to continue to be intact there. Well, I'm willing to test him out this week, and if it doesn't come through, then I know I can't trust him. Darnell Mooney going up against Seattle there at my wide receiver 26. Let's bring us on to this next tier, going from wide receiver 27 all the way down to wide receiver 37. Look at that. We've got the rest of our loves and fades in here. So wide receiver 27, we have Wan'Dale Robinson. He is a love of mine. This is going to be followed by at wide receiver 28, Tyreek Hill, Jackson Smith and Jigba at wide receiver 29, Jordan Addison, Trey Tucker, Ladd McConkey, Tyler Lockett, Romeo Doubs, Amari Cooper, George Pickens, and Demario Douglas there at wide receiver 37. So things do get interesting at wide receiver now. We've seen a big enough sample size for some of these guys that we're willing to maybe go a little bit lower than we would have, or a little bit higher than we would have earlier in the season, because they've been able to do these things. And one of those guys is Wan'Dale Robinson. He's overall been one of the more trustworthy wide receivers on the season. On a weekly basis, think of an average fantasy points per game type of stat, which is actually my own stat here, equalized value, which is just like average fantasy points per game, except it takes consistency into account. He's the wide receiver 20 on the season. And there's more on that stat. You can always see it if you become a member of the channel, which, by the way, thank you, members and new members. Welcome. And to me, for Wan'Dale Robinson, this isn't something where it's based on Neighbors returning or not. I am currently ranking Neighbors. But even if he doesn't return, or even if he does return, however you want to look at it, I'm still loving Wan'Dale Robinson this week, because Philadelphia is one of the best wide receiver matchups in all of fantasy football for the wide receiver position. It's a top 6 to be more specific about that. Depending on format for you specifically, it's still somewhere in there. Right around there, 5-6 basically. Then we got Tyreek Hill at wide receiver 28, and this is my first fade of this video. And I just want to be out here being a leading voice in the you don't have to start him group meeting here, whatever, for you Tyreek Hill owners. You don't have to, okay? If you drafted well, if you've got other guys, if you pick some guys off a waiver wire, because we're concerned about him and you just struggled to play him in other weeks, play them over him, check out the rankings. There are some guys I'm willing to take a shot on over Tyreek Hill. Now, first of all, why? Well, Tyreek Hill is the wide receiver 36 and wide receiver 55 in the last 2 games with Tyler Huntley, On the season, he's the wide receiver 37 via EV, equalized value rankings. But through the last 2 weeks with Tyler Huntley as his quarterback, wide receiver 55, wide receiver 36 finishes. I still have him higher than that, and that is because here, or in part because of the opponent. Indianapolis is going to be the easiest pass defense that this duo, being Tyreek Hill and Tyler Huntley, have faced. After that, we've got Trey Tucker there at wide receiver 31, my final love of the week at wide receiver. And, I haven't really messed with these projections too much. If we get confirmation that Jakobi Meyers is out, I might update them a little bit later in the week. For now, I'm not ranking Jakobi Meyers, but I do have projections currently as if Jakobi Meyers was playing too. So I haven't gone that extra step yet. But I would do some slight updating. I don't like to mess with these too much. I like mostly to be based on historical data. But, Trey Tucker going up against Los Angeles Rams. It's a really, really good matchup. The Los Angeles Rams defense is one that I'm really not afraid of the lack of talent on this Las Vegas offense. Last week, I had to tell several people, don't jump on Trey Tucker. Don't rank him too highly. Don't play him over so-and-so. Don't play him over so-and-so. Because, it was still a really tough matchup, and he was going to have all the more focus on him. So I just wasn't too optimistic about that. But Los Angeles Rams defense is a different kind of beast, a different element. I think that Trey Tucker, even if it's just him and Brock Bowers, could still get things going, get enough reception to have a good fantasy week. So, there we go. That is it for Trey Tucker. There's my little pitch on him. Let's go to my final two fades. At wide receiver 35, we've got Amari Cooper, new member of the Buffalo Bills. So congratulations to Amari Cooper owners. This should be better for you. Congratulations to the Bills. The Bills. This should help you out in real football. This week, we are going up against Tennessee Titans. Not a good matchup. First of all, too, for Amari Cooper, I do expect him to take over the Mac Hollins role and increase from that role, too. But essentially, that was the role that was helping to stretch this defense, if anything, the most. And threaten it at all three levels. That's going to be Amari Cooper. It might take a little bit of the ceiling away from Khalil Shakir, but it should make for a more efficient offense. So I'm not too worried about it, all in all, for Khalil Shakir. In terms of Amari Cooper in this Tennessee matchup, they're the third worst matchup for wide receivers in all of fantasy football. They don't allow a whole lot of points to, wide receivers, obviously. So to me, let's just give Amari Cooper, Josh Allen, let's give them a week to figure things out if we can. Preferably, that's what I would like to do. And you have my blessing to sit him and take a chance on other options this week. And not too different is going to be George Pickens. You once again have my blessing on George Pickens to sit him. He also has a tough matchup. I think has been worse. I don't know for sure here, but he's been worse than Tyreek Hill on the season. He's been the EV wide receiver 49 on the season, so that's not too good. This is the fourth worst matchup for in terms of fantasy points scored against defense, New York Jets defense, and that's including the first 3 or 4 weeks before George Pickens' attitude. Sorry, I jumped around there a little bit. In terms of his EV wide receiver 49 current ranking right now on the season, being wide receiver 49, that includes his first 3 or 4 weeks, which was before his attitude started to get in the way of his opportunities of just even being on the field and his performance. He's out there running routes at 60-70% speed and just kind of throwing a hissy fit. So that's not going to help fantasy owners. That's going to bring us on to the last tier of this video. We got Josh Downs in at wide receiver 38, followed by there is Khalil Shakir. We'll see if he goes this week or not. Christian Watson, Xavier Worthy, Christian Kirk, Michael Pittman Jr. to wrap this tier up. So we quickly start to go a little bit riskier here, but there are a lot of interesting options to lower in the rankings if you want to take a shot on a guy. There's some guys who've had some weeks. Actually, we can take a quick look at that, I think. Yeah, we're going to add about 18 minutes, 19 minutes right now probably. Not ranking currently Jakobi Meyers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Olave. So you got Xavier Legette here going up against Washington. Jerry Jeudy, now the primary receiving option in Cleveland, going up against Cincinnati. Michael Wilson going up against, Michael Wilson going to be without Marvin Harrison Jr. almost certainly. It is a tough wide receiver matchup, however, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd be much higher on him. But still, a nice opportunity there. So I think those were the main guys who I had some interest in. yeah, pretty much those are the main guys there that I wanted to point out if you're looking to take a shot on something, maybe even over these guys if you're willing to do that. That being Amari Cooper, George Pickens. All right, there we go. That is it for the video. Thank you very, very much. I will have the running backs video coming out tomorrow. And then, or later today, sorry, this will come out tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning. Running backs video later today, this evening. And then tomorrow morning, quarterbacks and tight ends video. All right, and that's in one video. So there we go. Thank you very, very much. Please like, comment, subscribe. That all helps. All right, peace out.